In this lecture, we look at sociological approaches to the family. When we are asked what we see when someone says the word family, these are the kinds of images that come to mind for most people. A mother, a father, and children, or what sociologists call the nuclear family. But families are changing in Canada and elsewhere. And in fact, nuclear families make up less than half of all Canada's families and are declining in number over time. Married couples are still the most common type of family in Canada, but the composition of family types within that is changing. You can see here that there are more households made up of couples without children than with children. There are also more common law families. Finally, there are more lone parent families, about 80% of which are headed by women. There is also an increasing number of same-sex couples in Canada, as you can see here. When we look at our birth rate and its impact on families, we can see that after the post-World War II baby boom, Canada's birth rate has declined steeply by 60% or more since 1959. Women are not only having less children, they are having children later in life. Looking ahead, thanks to this United Nations projection, we can see that Canada's birth rate will remain flat into the foreseeable future. Another change to Canada's families is that a lot of marriages end in divorce, about 35 to 40%. Before 1968, the only grounds for divorce was infidelity, and as you can see here by following the blue line, the divorce rate in Canada rose as the legislation was changed to allow for other grounds for divorce. So there was legislation in 1968 and then also in 1986. By the way, about 1 in 5 marriages are second marriages, hence the phenomenon of blended families. Lots of changes to the traditional family, as we've just seen. Doesn't mean that the family is in crisis, as some people argue. Let's look a little closer. For some, these changes to families signal a negative trend that they tie to social indicators such as crime. According to them, the solution is to return to what they often call the natural form of the family. In other words, dad working, mom at home, and children. Within the field of sociology, it is functionalists who have argued in favor of the traditional nuclear family. The functionalist argument is that the nuclear family unit is the best way for all of the functions of the family to be met, mainly raising children in a nurturing environment, plus economic cooperation. In the 1940s, functionalist sociologist George Murdoch went so far as to claim that the nuclear family was something close to a universal. But let's step back for a moment from this idea that the family is in crisis, at least according to functionalists. One problem with the functionalist outlook on the family is its exclusive focus on reproduction. As a result, they tend to ignore all of the social dimensions of the family. They also ignore the tensions that can be a part of family life. Finally, to hold up the nuclear family as the only solution is to ignore the fact that families take many forms. A case in point is the Kung San people of southern Africa, sometimes called the Bushmen of the Kalahari. They are a hunter-gatherer society. The Kung San live in small bands and are nomadic, which means that they move from place to place as resources are exhausted. There was a striking degree of gender equality between men and women, and the first clue that the Kongsan represent a very different form of the family is the fact that the responsibility for the children in a band is shared by everyone. In other words, families technically exist in the Kongsan, but there is no border between the community and the family, and certainly no private households. The point here is that it isn't in the nuclear family where society is reproduced, it is in the band. Now, let's jump to the conditions that led to the rise of the nuclear family type that is praised by functionalists as a cultural universal. So during the Industrial Revolution in Europe, economic activity shifted from the household to the factories. As men went to work for a wage, women were left responsible for childcare and the household. As a consequence, the family came to mean the private household. If we fast forward to the 1950s, the separation of the household, ruled by women, and the sphere of work, dominated by men, became more entrenched. And with that separation, ideas about the supposedly natural differences between men and women also became more entrenched. The bottom line here is that the traditional nuclear family, far from a cultural universal, is the result of a specific set of social and economic circumstances. As times have changed, so have families. Thank you.